Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
And welcome back to another episode of Bears on Tap. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined by Mr. Ron Luce and Mr. Brennan Shagrew. Gentlemen, how are we doing this fine evening?
Hold on. I'm just making sure. No, the sky wasn't falling. Today was supposed to be Rapture Day. And I think that after last week, the majority of Bears fans thought the sky was falling, but turns out everything's okay. Everything's okay. I feel okay coming off a big win. How are you guys feeling?
I'm still on Victory Tuesday tonight. So we're doing good, man. It was just nice to see a Bears win and ride it into the beginning of this week. And yes, to your point, Brendan, thankfully the sky has not fallen and the Bears have won a football game. And maybe there's real hope.
Maybe there's real hope. That's about as bright as it gets for Bears fans the last few years. And there's a lot to be excited about, though, right? Like the offense started to look like it's really clicking. I feel like we saw, especially the offensive line, start to work out 2 weeks ago, even though it was a blowout. And then like we saw some of the further progression this past week, and it's all starting to look like how we hoped it would under Ben Johnson. And that defense was shocking on Sunday. So without getting too much into what happened there, because we already did a post-game show, right? That's already been talked about. We're on to Las Vegas. So let's take a look at this Las Vegas Raiders roster with Pete Carroll at the helm, who is first year there, Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator and Patrick Graham at defensive coordinator. I mean, that's a star-studded coaching staff, if you ask me. But starting with you, Brendan, what do you notice about this roster that is interesting to you?
Well, I would say, the biggest thing is Geno Smith at quarterback reuniting with Pete Carroll. He's had a very up and down season so far, but I'm of the belief that Geno for the last few years has shown me enough where even if he does have a bad game, he could still bounce back. He can still sling it. So, I think for those who are kind of like counting the Raiders completely out already, I wouldn't do that. Clearly these two guys have a good working relationship. And I think it's taking some time for this coaching staff, kind of like what we've seen with the Bears, to get acclimated with this roster. You have, like a new signal caller on offense, but a defense that has kind of stayed the same with at least their primary star players. Obviously guys like Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz coming back. So I just see a team that I think can still do some damage at some point this season, but they're still trying to figure out who they are and how they work with one another. There's some pieces here where there's star players on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. They have multiple blue chip players, which is something that will always kind of catch my attention. But Ron, do you have any thoughts on this roster?
I think their offensive line gets a lot of really good grades, Q, even though I don't know if that's entirely true. The Raiders O-line has had some recent issues, but they grade out well on the Crisco metrics, we see in front of us. So,
which is literally 85% PFF grade and 15% snap percentage over the last 2 years. So it's nothing groundbreaking that we're talking with these numbers on the screen.
No, and that's fair. And you've cited the sources, but I think that's an interesting battle to keep an eye on, because I think about this Bears team that has been able to generate pass rush. And the first thing that catches my attention is maybe this is the team that they can start to hone in on some things and figure out what really works and use it as kind of we're just going to tee off and go after them type of game. I think that's what the defense could use. I think it's what the offense could use too, because we've heard about the Las Vegas flu, and I hope the Bears don't catch it.
Yeah. So, speaking of that, one thing that I'm not sure if what is Las Vegas flu? What are you referencing, Ron?
Sometimes people don't really sleep well in Las Vegas,
Okay.
and they wake up the next day not feeling the best, Q, and that would be tragic. I don't want to see the Bears get caught up in the mess as a home field advantage of sorts, I think, for teams in Vegas.
Yeah. So
But
go ahead.
counterpoint. Bears are 1-0 in Vegas all time.
Boom.
Boom.
1-0. Undefeated. So I looked this up before the show. Raiders are 19-24 since the stadium opened in Vegas at home. So that's 44% win percentage. Which is right around where they probably I don't think that's that different than their road win percentage. Like I believe that their road win percentage was 40% over that same span. But they cover 54% of their games at home. That's a big number. That tells me that they are a tough out at home historically, and right now Vegas has them as a favorite in this game. But I think 1.5 point favorites. So I think this is going to be a battle. And over at Shaving Points Podcast, where we do, off season, we talk through every roster, and then we do bets all throughout the year. One of the reasons we do our off season series where we talk through each roster is to determine what team we're not sleeping on. Right. Last year it was the Cardinals. Year before it was the Texans. Year before it was the Lions. This year it was the Raiders. We are not sleeping on the Raiders over there because they have a quarterback, they have a blue chip tight end, and they have a blue chip edge rusher, plus a Hall of Fame coach. That is a tough thing for me to look past. So that's a big thing for me this week. Don't sleep on these Raiders because, especially coming back from a road trip at home, they played the Chargers tighter than the score was 2 weeks ago. They went into New England and beat the Patriots week 1. This team they're young and naive. They don't realize that they're not good. So they're gonna challenge you and punch you in the mouth is the way I see it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get to our first segment here.
The baddest man.
Starting with Ron this time. Who is your baddest man on the Las Vegas Raiders?
There's a couple of low-hanging fruits, in my opinion. I'm not going to pick one of those, guys. I think, in my opinion, maybe there's a little bit of a soft spot for this player, especially now that he's not a New England Patriot. Jakobi Meyers is kind of a bad dude, and nobody really talks about it. He's very much capable of being the number one receiver. I think he thrives even more with another number one receiver. He raises his game. That's a bad dude. And with a depleted Bears secondary right now, he's the guy I'm keeping an eye on because they're going to have to respect Trey Tucker's speed. And we've seen that most recently in their game against Washington. And of course, you have to respect a player like Bowers on the offensive end as well. It's Jakobi Meyers for me, man. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I mean, we got to hope we get Kyler back, right? I feel like that goes a long way towards helping on Jakobi, who really eats out of the slot. That's without him, that's a tough matchup. I'm with you there.
100%.
But Brendan, where are you going for your baddest man on the Raiders?
Well, unlike Ron, I am going to take some of the low-hanging fruit. But Jakobi Meyers is somebody who I'm glad you mentioned it because I'll just say quickly, for a guy who's playing with a chip on his shoulder, he wanted new money or a trade request. He has quietly produced. I think because the Raiders have been so bad the last few years, he goes under the radar, and I could definitely see him breaking open a game here. Because as great as the defense played on Sunday, I don't think we should get used to that performance overall. But I digress. My baddest man, I have to go with Brock Bowers. I mean, just one of the best tight ends already in the NFL. He's had a quiet season. I mean, I don't think people realize he's yet to have a touchdown, which is wild to think about, especially considering the lofty expectations. And up until for the first few weeks, the Bears have actually played tight ends fairly well. They haven't necessarily destroyed them like some of the receivers, running backs, or anything. But then Sunday happened, and I know a lot of the Cowboys were playing a lot of things underneath. They were just kind of trying to get chunk yards. But Jake Ferguson, guys, had 13 catches for 82 yards. He was peppered a lot, and that middle of the field was wide open for a lot of the time. And I know CeeDee Lamb goes out, things change, but still a 13 catch day for a tight end. You have to imagine that Brock Bowers is going to be very much part of the game plan. And I do, while the Bears tight ends have played better, you guys talked about Kyler Gordon being out. That's huge. There are still definitely mismatch opportunities there where I'm worried about chunk plays coming from the middle of the field and coming from the tight end position. So Brock Bowers is a bad man in his own right. And then seeing what Jake Ferguson did to the Bears this past weekend, definitely a little bit more concerned there as well.
Yeah, I think Brock Bowers is probably the number one choice I would put out there. But it's worth noting, he hurt it. He has a knee injury that he's playing through. And that's limiting him. He had the knee injury kick up in week 1, and he hasn't quite looked the same since. But that doesn't mean he won't be the same by Sunday. You know, like you never know when that stuff's just kind of going to get better enough that the guy starts looking the same again. For me, frankly, I wasn't prepared to go with Max Crosby, but I'm going to go with Max Crosby, and I'll tell you who I was going to be prepared for after. But Max Crosby is like the clear A1 defensive player on this team. He is the one defensive player on this team that you look at and you go like, that's a problem. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Max Crosby is a problem because he is so long and so ferocious with his attack. Like his long arm move is just utterly filthy. And I think he has like 35-inch long arms or something. He just gets right into the offensive tackle and dictates the play from there however he wants. He's got great bend in his ankles, great agility. He can hit some wild angles and really just make your life hell for the offensive tackles. And that's going to be a real challenge for Braxton Jones this week and Darnell Wright, who did not look right at all down the stretch last week after injuring that elbow. So Max Crosby is the guy who has a chance to wreck this game for the Raiders, and that's the guy who the Bears need to be paying the most attention to. Now, I was expecting to hear you guys go Crosby and Bowers. Like, okay, so I got to find the third. And Jeremy Chin crossed my mind because Chin is always a fun safety. He's very versatile, very Southern Illinois guy, I believe. A Saluki.
He's a Saluki
legend. But just he's such a fun football player. But ultimately, I went on the offense. I was thinking on the offense side where I believe in Ashton Jeanty. I believe that this offensive line is not as bad talent-wise as they've looked. When I see their plays where there's like 3 guys tackling Jeanty in the backfield, I'm like, okay, this is a O-line coach or a Chip Kelly problem more than anything. Because these guys, they don't know what they're doing. So, me looking at that, thinking Chip Kelly's he can't be a stupid coach, right? He's had a lot of success in his career, at least designing run concepts. He might simplify stuff going forward for his guys to make sure that they're getting some stuff right. And that is the chance where Ashton Jeanty can become the baddest man on the field. And that's why I was prepared to talk Jeanty, because like I don't want to be the team that he gets right against, you know?
Yeah. Thanks for that thought, Q. No, but he's 100% right. I think everybody, this is the same running back that Bears fans were clamoring for. He's eventually going to get his at some point.
Exactly. And I mean, we know how poor the Bears run defense has been. Even last week against the Cowboys, like it was still not good with Javonte Williams. Even Miles Sanders, guys, had some moments. So if you can make Miles Sanders look somewhat respectable, you definitely worry about what Ashton Jeanty can do. And again, I think it goes back to what I said before, like a veteran coaching staff who has not worked together per se, but has been around the game is still looking to try and figure out how these players fit with their scheme and to, figure out the best way to use them. I do think Jeanty's going to have one of those just monster games at some point. And very well could be the Bears. And real quickly, when you mentioned Jeremy Chin, I think it's crazy that you have Jeremy Chin and Jamal Adams in the same secondary. There's just two kind of like wild card guys. And I know Jamal Adams is certainly not the player he once was, but you just see those two names. You're like, man, that can kind of get funky at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Jamal Adams is almost playing like it because they have a weird linebacker rotation in their numbers where like Devin White and Landon Roberts and Jermaine Pratt are all like none of them seem like they're complete full-time players. And Jamal Adams is really playing like a Sam Backer role for them more than anything, which is interesting. He's such a light player for that, but he's coming like he is more of a box player than anything in their dime packages.
Totally. And that's what he was always best at anyway.
Right. Blitz boy. But anyways, that was my favorite nickname for Jamal Adams back in the day. He's like he's got 8 sacks as safety. Yeah, Blitz boy. He's great. But anyways, let's get to the Bears. Starting with Brendan here. Who's the baddest man on the Bears this week?
Ooh, there's believe it or not, guys, there's some names to choose from after what we saw. I'm gonna go a little off the board here. And I'm going to say Ben Johnson. I just watching the offense go to work last week. And really, I mean, the whole team came from ready to play. The defense we talked about, just nobody was prepared for that type of performance. The players themselves kind of held a players only meeting. Not anything against the coaches. They just said, hey, we're better than this. We have got to play better than this. But Johnson had all his guys ready to go. The offensive game plan last week, it felt like for the first time that the marriage between him and Williams was fully like working. Everything was harmonious. No pre-snap issues. The players were effective getting in and out of the huddle. The play calls, it seemed like he was dialing up the right call at the right time where the Cowboys were expecting either a pass, certain type of run. They would go in different direction with an end around, whatever it was. It just felt like Ben Johnson was one step ahead. And maybe that's part of going against Matt Eberflus, the dweeb that he is. But I also like to think that it's showing that, okay, he's finally clicking with this team. He knows the buttons to push, and he's going to be so prepared with what he's got ready for the Raiders, not only just from a play calling standpoint, but from getting his team ready to go. Guys, I'm sure people have seen the locker room footage with him firing up the team and just how everybody's rallying around him. I decided to just for fun make a compilation of the Matt Eberflus first win to show just the differences. The team is buying into what he's doing, and I just think right now he's the baddest guy going because of what the team looks like under him and how he's preparing the offense, the defense, and the special teams.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. And what like I got done with my offensive line review this evening, and like it was masterful the way that Ben Johnson ran the run concepts while also protecting both of his offensive tackles. That is such a difficult thing to do. And he did it. He managed it. He kept them so off balance. So he hit just the right buttons all over where it was like this run game can still work despite Darnell Wright being right arm tied behind his back and potentially, I mean, this is just my theory after watching it, potentially a little loopy on painkillers. Because he was kind of there were some balance times there like where this balance was kind of going weird and where he looked like he was just kind of a little like hazy. I don't know, maybe it wasn't, but that was the vibe I picked up watching his tape. Braxton Jones, who was really wearing down in the second half again. Like, I mean, I think Ben Johnson did a masterful job protecting both those guys from being a problem within your offense and being able to keep it on the ground. But Brendan, you said, what'd you say about a players only meeting? I didn't hear about this.
So it came out that I may not have full details right, but I believe Grady Jarrett called a players only meeting for the defense to just kind of like get everything out, try to figure out like frustrations on them. And it wasn't necessarily like an indictment on Dennis Allen. It wasn't like you know, here, like the players only meetings that happened this early in the season, I think it was more of just we got to get right. Like we as a defense have to get right. The offense is, you know, turning it on. We have to figure something out. And clearly something clicked. I mean, 4 turnovers out of nowhere. But yeah, I think Ian Rappaport had it. I'm pretty sure it was a pregame thing. And a few of the Bears beat reporters after the fact mentioned it.
Well, when you said it, my ears perked up. I was like, oh no, I don't like that. But it sounds like it's probably not as concerning as maybe last year's was. Probably not as concerning. And our apologies, anyone if the audio is glitching. Am I coming through clear to you guys?
Yeah.
Sound good
Is it
on my
me?
end.
Okay. No, I mean, no, neither of you guys have had issues for me. So hopefully that's cleared up. But Ron, where are you going with your baddest man?
Oh man, you know, I've thought about just what fun take can we throw at the wall, and I mean that in the sense of there are a lot of positives that we can target on baddest man, on what we're watching, the whole nine. Right, we're not used to this on the Bears' offensive side of the football, and I can't help but see last week's game and go, what other ways is Ben Johnson going to use Luther Burden? Because it was all calculated big shots. He's the big shot machine, right? Hey, he's only gonna get 3 catches a game, but it's gonna be for 102 tugs if everything goes right. I'm really excited to see what Luther Burden does this week. And for that reason, he's my baddest man. He had a great game last game. You can tell they're dialing up how they want to use him. I can't wait to see it.
I like it. He was a guy who I was considering too, where I think like, did you guys see the post game or not the post game, the post practice like interview that he had where he's just like, like yelling, "I love the end zone!" Like he's hyped up right now, and I think he's fully bought in. I could totally see him having another big day with a few like moments that were just drawn up specifically for him.
Yeah. And how about his selling of the actual like flea flicker too? I think that's something that goes under the radar when you're talking about play action or, you know, lawn developing plays. He sold the hell out of that flea flicker and was able to hit that top speed, get where he needed to go. I don't think I think for a rookie, it may seem easy, but I think it's those details that maybe we were worried about that he wouldn't be as on point this early in the season. But I give him a lot of credit for being this involved this early. And yeah, dude's a maniac. I love it.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, I was chatting with some of the on tap writers earlier this evening, and they said they thought there were similar things in Detroit with Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs when they were rookies, of them like having to come along slowly, and maybe it's just a Ben Johnson thing. And I think it makes sense that it is, because within his offense, there is so much fine detail that he wants polished and clean, and that's one of them. Like that, selling that as the run was part that, like, that is one of the details that he really cares about, and that's how you get, like in Detroit, it's how you get Amon-Ra St. Brown running wide open over the middle. That's how you get Luther Burden, no one within 10 yards of him, 40, 50 yards downfield. Like, it's beautiful.
When the long game is set up with so much deception, it becomes artwork on the football field.
Yeah, and they put so many run concepts on film this week that like there's a lot. The Raiders have their work cut out for them. Let's put it that way. Now, for me, like, my initial thought here was it's got to be Montez Sweat. It's got to be Montez Sweat. Like, we're talking about DJ Glaze at right tackle. You can't let DJ Glaze beat you, Montez. Like, you got to be getting some work against DJ Glaze here, getting after the quarterback and going and hitting Geno. But that was my initial thought. As I was looking through this and thinking it through, I'm thinking about the Raiders defense. DeAndre Swift hasn't had a big game yet this year. You know he's going to pop off at some point here for a couple explosives in the game. He does it every But like last year, there were like 3 games where it was like he just was the offense to a degree, and the ability's there. We saw him get the big screen last week, but like the explosive runs haven't fully come yet. And with the way the run blocking was trending, as long as Wright's elbow is like manageable, I do think DeAndre Swift has a chance to have a big day against this team. And I think it's a team that like kind of fits perfectly for him to be able to. He might not have to see the field perfectly because their defense just isn't quite as talented. But so that's my guy. I'm going with DeAndre Swift. But let's go ahead and get to the next segment here.
The nicest man.
All right, starting with Ron for the Raiders. Who's your nicest man for the Raiders?
Oh, man. Q, my nicest man is a guy that you and I chatted about. He's more of a center. He's not quite a guard. JPJ is where I'm going here for the Raiders. I think if the Bears are going to have a big day on the defensive line, they need to target the weak points. Even by the numbers, the weak points are still both the guards. So they need to be able to attack inside. And I would be looking at a player like JPJ who doesn't really work well with athleticism. Maybe he's a guy you want to blitz on and bring things up with faster rushers. So that way you can make some penetration and get to Geno Smith. Because if you can make his day difficult, we could see another offensive explosion because the defense is continually giving the Ben Johnson offense more opportunities. So it's those guards, but specifically JPJ for me.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where he's at this week because I believe he was cleared last week but didn't play. Like he got a concussion week 1, but he was cleared last week, but he didn't play. So it'd be interesting to see if they insert him back or not. Like I have him listed here because on the depth chart, he is still the starter, but they had Alex Kappa there playing last week. I would have to assume they're not quitting on, a second year, first round pick that quickly. But like, especially without at least just putting him back to center, I don't think Jordan Meredith has been good enough to prevent you from playing JPJ at center even. But I'm with you. His feet are slow. Like he's not a guard in my mind. He was a center through and through, and he had the power to play guard potentially, but like that was like a worst case scenario in my mind coming out. But that foot speed, the foot speed, I don't want to say it's processing because the guy did play center and play it well at Oregon. So I really just think it's foot speed. He tends to lunge when he needs to cover ground, and at guard, you need to cover more ground than center.
Most definitely.
Brendan, where are you going for your nicest man on the Raiders?
Well, not too far from JPJ, and you mentioned him. I think maybe it's low-hanging fruit, but my goodness, DJ Glaze is not a good tackle, at least not right now. The guy's making 2025 Von Miller look like 2015 Von Miller, and that's saying something. I mean, last week alone with the Commanders, he had 2 sacks, or he gave up 2 sacks, 4 hurries, 6 pressures. He's one of the lowest PFF graded linemen right now. And I mean, you mentioned wanting to pick Sweat as your baddest man. He had a much better game this past weekend. There's no reason why Montez Sweat shouldn't have at least 1 sack and a couple TFLs against DJ Glaze with what he's putting on tape. I mean, even from week 1, week 2, like it's been bad. And I remember Harold Landry had a really bad or really nice sack on him, or at least pressure. Khalil Mack might have done it in week 2 before he got hurt, I believe. So he's given up something every single week. So it's Montez Sweat turn. I think, the fact that JPJ has to play next to him, it's probably not helping. I mean, when you have a weak link already and he's not playing well either, that whole right side of the line is ripe for the picking. So DJ Glaze is my nice boy.
I think he's a very nice boy. I mean, I think that, frankly, I can't say I didn't even watch DJ Glaze in the draft process 2 years ago. He was just a guy I didn't get to, so I can't give a ton of insight on him. But like, I don't know. I was surprised how good his PFF numbers were last year, and I didn't fully buy into them. And it looks like this year they're coming back down to earth some. So I mean, yeah, he's the reason why Sweat is my baddest man, or was a baddest man candidate, like the strongest candidate. But I think that's a good pick there for me. I'm going with the guy that the Bears, or I guess DJ Moore at least probably knows well. I don't think anyone else on the Bears would know him that well. That's Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes was burnt toast in Green Bay over and over and over. He was a highly picked player, like I want to say first or second round. I forget which one, but he was first round. Okay. He never quite worked out there though. He was just notorious for getting burned deep. To me, that's your Rome. Rome is up on him. Luther's up on him on those play action looks. Like, I need some downfield ball winners or guys who have that special burst to kind of break away from him, because I don't think he has the speed to keep up downfield. And especially if you have like Jeremy Chin over the top of him, or like if Jamal Adams is playing in coverage, like I think that's your shot to take, because I don't think either of those guys play that great moving backwards. I can't say I know a lot about their free safety, Polamalu. That sounds like Pola Mao.
The reincarnation.
Yeah, but so like I don't think they have a ton to really love here. I have to assume Pete Carroll's still running a lot of cover 3, which is what's going to put Stokes on that deep third. I want to attack that section of the field right there.
It's a really good point you bring up with the strong safeties, or at least the style that they play in, and knowing that you have opportunities to get Stokes deep. And you got to be really bad for the Packers to say we don't want you in our secondary because of how bad it's been the last few years. They need guys, and they were willing to say goodbye to Eric Stokes. So that's a really good call out. I'm very much looking forward to that matchup.
Well, and it's such an interesting thing with Pete Carroll, because like Pete Carroll has revived corners before. Like if you're long and aggressive, Pete Carroll has said, I want to work with you, and he's made it work with guys before. And I think that does kind of fit Stokes, but like I'm curious where Darian Porter is. They spent the 68th overall pick on this guy. He's an athletic freak, very inexperienced coming out of Iowa State last year, but like the dude ran like a 4.2 at 6'2", 6'3". Like he was, but when you saw it, you're like, oh, this is a Pete Carroll corner right here. And like I felt like a lot of their defense kind of built on the idea of Pete Carroll working his magic with him, but he's not a starter out there. I'm not sure if he got hurt or anything, but I'm interested why he's not there, and if it's really just how inexperienced he was coming into the league. But let's get over to the Bears, and starting with Brendan here. Who's your nicest man on the Bears this week?
Well, we know the defense looked a lot better, but there was still one guy who was a glaring problem, in my opinion, and that was Nahshon Wright. Just continues to, he flashed in week 1 with the pick 6, but I mean, JJ McCarthy, like anybody could have caught that pick 6. Every single person knew that was coming. Since then, Wright just looks like he's a step slow. He's not, he's just missing guys when I don't know. I'm trying to like figure out the way to put it. He's just a tick slow. I mean, even against guys who aren't burners. I mean, you see him slip, you see him not fully recognize a play that's coming, and by the time he gets his head around, it's too late. You saw it with George Pickens a few times. PFF had him as the second cornerback who gave up the most yards in week 3. Actually, I think Kai Blue Kelly, believe he's on the Raiders. So that's an interesting one. But he gave up 87 yards, and Sean Wright was 84 yards. So look, Tyreek Stevenson had a really good bounce back day. The linebackers were good. Thought the safeties played a lot better, but I just have worries about Nahshon Wright, and whether it's Jacoby Myers or Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker went off last week. The Raiders still have some guys that can get past you, especially with some speed, and that is not Nahshon Wright's forte. So I'm just worried about him. I think he's definitely one of those guys who is going to give up a big play, and hopefully it doesn't hurt the Bears too much. They're up, but I just think something bad's going to happen again in week 4.
Yeah, there was in Detroit, he gave up a bomb to Jameson Williams. And it was true. Honestly, it was pure comedy watching it on the All 22 because it was just like, this dude has no chance here. Like Jameson Williams, one of the fastest players in the NFL. It was just like he's running as hard as he can, but like it doesn't matter because Jameson Williams is just that fast. And they do have some burners on the Raiders, and Geno is never scared to give them a shot. So like that could come into play this week for sure. And I would have to assume Byard is playing over Nahshon Wright a lot of this game. Ron, where are you going for your nicest man?
Gentlemen, I almost feel bad picking this player, but there's not a lot of help behind DeAndre Swift right now. Kyle Monangai is just not ready. I don't know what's going on with Roschon. He's playing special teams, but he's not being used in the backfield. It's very clear that the Bears don't have a true second running back, and that's really, I feel like that's a thing that Ben Johnson likes, that I think he wants to keep eventually in Chicago. Right now, they just don't have the horse to run with Swift. So Monangai by default, but really both of those running backs I think could be my nicest men because they're just not seeing the field. It is DeAndre Swift, and then it's DJ Moore, and then it's Zacchaeus, and then it's Burden. And then it's 50 feet of shit. And then it's the two backup running backs. That's really what it feels like based on how little they play. Hell, they're literally being like, yeah, DJ Moore, we're lining you up in the backfield multiple times because we trust you more. It's kind of crazy.
Speaking of which, Ron, on our O-line show tomorrow, I got a rep of DJ Moore running the football to show you. Oh, boy.
I'm excited.
It's painful.
These get better and worse by the minute because there's creativity. So you're going to get the big oh no's and you're going to get the big oh yes.
Yeah.
And it makes that show so much more fun, dude. I'm ready. I'm excited.
All right. Now, and that might be a first where we've heard the same guy's name in the nicest and baddest section with Swift. So that's just want to point out on Tap Sportsnet or Bears on Tap first, which, speaking of which, actually, I just remembered this. You guys, welcome to the 400th episode of Bears on Tap.
That's right.
Yeah. That just recalled in my mind from Sunday night when I was uploading something that was $3.99. But anyways, for my nicest man, I'm going a little bit. It's not a specific player, but it's a position. I'm going with the offensive tackles edges.
Ooh.
Darnell Wright's right arm was a real struggle in the second half last week. He really just was incapable of protecting that right edge, which led to some overcompensating his body to the right, which opened up inside moves, led to really in the run game, they had to protect him a lot. And Braxton Jones, they've been protecting his edge all season because I'm not sure if it sounded like the Roshar was saying it's more of a fatigue thing than anything, but he's not exploding out at his max. He showed some improvement last week, but not a ton where it's like, let me put it this way. He showed improvement that makes me think he's the most comfortable with his body he's been in a long time from a health standpoint, but I'm not sure it actually resulted in better like endurance throughout the game. He still broke down later and they just did a better job of managing that. But there was a rep that I was like, oh, I haven't seen him do that in a few years now, where it was like, okay, I think that neck injury did linger for quite a while where it kept being an issue. But I still think he's having trouble reaching that edge or like getting his range out there, which has always been an issue for him. And they've really protected it this year, but it's harder when you have to protect both sides of the line to keep consistently doing it. And I guarantee you, again, the Raiders see that and say, we're going to force their hand on having to choose a side or like die by a million paper cuts type thing. So offensive tackles, outside edges is where I'm going for my nicest man. But let's go ahead and get to our unless, do you have something to add? Either
I was just going to mention that we had talked last week talking about Braxton Jones and how bad he was with the Lions. I think we had said don't be surprised if there's a benching. It seems like that could be a possibility. And it really sounded like that Dan Rochar was they were going to rotate Theo Benedette in. Like that was part of the plan to kind of keep Braxton Jones fresh and make sure he didn't break down. That didn't happen for a couple of reasons. One, because Benedette was in for Wright for much of the game, or at least a good part of it. But two, the Bears were up so much, they didn't need to kind of protect Jones as much as they would have in a closer game. So that I think is still potentially on the table because, like you said, he's still breaking down a little bit. He's still, whether it's fatigue, injury, whatever. So I think there's still a chance we see Theo Benedette, depending on what happens with Darnell Wright. Maybe we see some Ozzy Trapillo on the right side and Theo Benedette on the left side. And does that make things a little better? I don't know, but could be very interesting to watch what happens with that.
I think Trapillo has to be active this week based on how Wright looked in the second half. I have a hard time imagining Trapillo would be worse than Wright was in the second half. Let's put it that way, where like it didn't derail them because they didn't need to do a lot and they were able to get more creative with the runs and 19 play drive and all that. But like I don't know in a neutral game script if that version of Darnell Wright is very passable. And again, 6 days of recovery might make that a whole lot better, but like I'm concerned over it right now. All right, let's get to our final segment here.
Keys to victory.
I love watching that bear eat that fish. Okay. Gentlemen, starting with, I'll toss this one to Ron first. What's your key to victory for the Bears this week?
Man, my key to victory is don't make this a boring game. And what I mean by that is I think the game plan needs to be tailored to taking some really calculated shots. I think a reason that teams struggle going from the East Coast to the West Coast is just the time change in such a short amount of time. So rather than we're going to play the grind it game and time of possession, and DJ Moore's talking about how that long drive they had in the third quarter was terrible because it sucks. Yeah, it does. When you're out there for 19 plays, it's awful. Anything more than like 8 plays is typically awful. For them to instead come out and say, no, we're going to take the calculated Luther Burden shot again. We're going to go and just try to bury this Raiders team from the jump. Try and take advantage of maybe some momentum of them losing pretty terribly last week and do it again. I really think that that's what has to happen. Don't play boring football.
Don't play boring football. Brendan, what is your key to victory for the Bears this week?
I think my key victory is to keep the sin out of Sin City. And what I mean is don't commit the pre-snap penalties. Look what happened when everything was flowing the way it needed to flow. You didn't shoot yourself in the foot. You're not putting yourself, in 2nd and 20 situations for the most part. And look what happened. Drives were sustained. Explosive plays were able to happen. Things weren't derailed as much. So what the Bears did, not only obviously, keeping things playing well against, the actual players, but, having the discipline and getting in and out of the huddle effectively, make sure you do that in what could be a pseudo home game. I know a lot of people are coming from Chicago. The Raiders are going to have a lot of Bears fans in that building. So it could be like a split crowd that the Bears are working with. Just do yourself a favor. Don't commit those pre-snap penalties. The drives are going to be sustained. Maybe you don't get the kill shot as early as Ron wants, but you're still on the field and you're not putting your defense behind the hole. So that's kind of my big key. It worked very well last week. Keep it going. Keep that operation smooth.
I like that one. I think that ties in well with mine, where mine is shameless self-promotion for shaving points, but don't sleep on the Raiders. Like, I do think this is a team that's going to be feisty all year, that's going to be in a bunch of games, and is going to make life tough on you on the road. That gets a little harder. Hopefully, it's a split crowd. Avoiding penalties is one way to do that. The Bears are the more talented team this week. I think that much is clear. But that doesn't mean the more talented team loses all the time. Like, they got to be prepared on their P's and Q's. Don't let a win go to your head. You need to, or they need to be fully invested in beating this team, because I think they're just young and dumb and going to punch whoever's in front of them in the mouth, which is a good thing in football terms. Like, they are feisty as hell. Geno Smith is always in a game. And Pete Carroll just knows the right buttons to push on guys to get the best out of them. And I trust that. I trust that more than I can logically explain. And so that to me is just, don't sleep on these guys. This is not a get right game where you can, take the Bears aren't good enough right now to have true get right games like good teams do, where they just say, like, I feel like the last years, like we've seen the Chiefs have a game with the Panthers that was really close. And a lot of those games in the NFL, those are weeks where the coaches say, we're going to let off the gas on our guys a little and give them a break. The Bears aren't a team that gets that break yet. So don't sleep on them. Make sure that you take care of business in Vegas and keep those sins out of it. Hit some shots. Like, let's go get a win in Vegas. But any final thoughts from you guys before we close this thing out?
I'll just say this. I hope that, to your point, I really hope that Pete Carroll and Geno Smith left that crazy Seattle comeback thing, whatever, in Seattle, because those two were kings of those fourth quarter comebacks. And you just don't want to get into a situation where you're up by 3, there's 2 minutes left, and giving the ball back to Geno and Pete, because we've seen that story play out too many times.
Yeah, I mean, Geno has not been good so far this year. But they've played some good defenses along the way so far. And, man, Geno is best with his back against a wall. I swear to God. Like, he just pulls some wild stuff out of his ass when he's in desperation mode. And just don't let that be against the Bears. But, gentlemen, thank you for talking with me. Everyone out there, thank you for listening, watching with us. And why don't we get out of here with a good old-fashioned bear down and close this out?
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.
Bear down.